This is a really funny book. Let me read out the story. A panda walks into a cafe. Okay. He orders a sandwich, eats it, then draws a gun and fires 2 shots in the air. Why? Asked the confused waiter as the panda makes towards the exit. 大摇大摆地往外面走去了。The panda produces a badly punctuated wildlife manual and tosses over his shoulder. You want to see why I gave 2 shots? Well, look at the pamphlet. The waiter turns to the relevant entry and sure enough finds an explanation. Panda in capital letters. Full stop. Large, black and white, bear-like mammal. 一种像熊的哺乳动物。Native to China. Full stop. Eats, shoots and leaves. The panda eats, shoots and leaves, you know. But unfortunately, after eats, there is a comma. So the panda eats 2 sandwiches, shoots 2 shots, and then 大摇大摆 leaves. Okay. So this is called A Runaway, #1 British bestseller, written by a woman writer. And her slogan is "Sticklers of the world unite," just like the workers of the world unite. Sticklers, meaning those grammatical sticklers. Of whom, unhappily, I'm one. That's why I'm getting to be united with her. Well, today we have to finish this 2-minute books. Then we will terminate this one-man show. And I hope that you will be able to give presentations on George Orwell and Stephen King about writing. Well, I remember mentioning that the school authorities require that every teacher have a kind of open house arrangement for their students. So my open house hours will be 4 p.m. to 6 p.m. Wednesday afternoon. Okay, not in the department office, but in my home. It's next door to management school. It's called the dorm number 9. Well, let's look at the 4 different types of readers. 4 different types of actually feedback to so many books. Some said, well, I admit defeat. I won't be able to read that many books. And some of them are very snobbish. Only read those books everyone reads, so that on a social occasion they will have something to talk about, right? Thirdly, is the kind of the third one is a snobbish one. The second one is a selective one, and the fourth one is called what they call the cream theory. You all know what cream is. Cream is the best part of the music. Of the milk. You know, you skim over. So it's supposedly the best one. So how about this cream theory? Well, the cream theory, he was trying to explain to you what pitfalls cream theory really has. Let me see. On page 8, the 3rd paragraph from the bottom. Nevertheless, our friend plods on, head bowed and muscles tense. Our friend. What friend? 4th reader. Meaning the cream reader. Our 4th friend plods on. Just like a beast of burden, with head bowed and muscles tense. And of course, these two will give you the image of a horse working very, very hard, right? Working hard. The cream theory, even for its most genuine, respectable adherents, not to say those hypocritical adherents. Let's only look at those really honest people who uphold this cream theory. Let's look at them. Well, even though you look at them, this theory is at best a delusion. Anything but a delusive. It's not real. It's not to come by. It's not going to materialize. However, it is only a delusion. Only a kind of imaginary thing. You cannot possibly put into practice what they really think. That is not the way in which literature works or life works. That is, well, and then a difficult sentence. As well saw off the topmost the 6 feet of Jean-Franc, set the mass up in your back garden and take your guests out to admire the terrific grandeur of the scenery. Now first you have to make clear what Jean-Franc is. Jean-Franc is the name of a summit, name of a mount summit. Jean-Franc. Jean-Franc is situated in southern Switzerland, in the Bernese Alps. 波尔尼阿尔卑斯山有个高峰叫 Jean-Franc。那么你如果要执行 cream theory, what do? You just as well do the following. As well, meaning to put the theory in practice. One may as well saw off. Saw is the verb, principal verb. Meaning you use a saw, you use an instrument, and then you saw it off. You saw the mountain head off, right? Okay, 6 feet of the mountain head. Saw it off. And then what do you do about it? Topmost 6 feet of the Jean-Franc, set the mass up in your back garden. It's just like your rookery, just like what we Chinese oftentimes have in their back garden, that is called the rookery. 像假山一样的，把它往后面一放。那什么叫 cream theory 啊？那就是这样。与其说你要实行 cream theory， 不如把 Jean-Franc 的6英尺的高的山峰用锯子锯下来，然后 move the whole mass back to your garden. Okay, then whenever you have guests, whenever you have open house, then invite your guests to your back garden and say to them, look at how splendid this site is, you know. This is a cream theory. This is what cream theory really boils down to. Okay? Clear? So this is, in other words, this will not do. The cream theory finds its best expression in those dreadful lists of the world's best books. This again is what I'm very much averse to do. Actually, lots of people would approach me for drawing up a list of books, you know, to be read, which I hate to do, because people are so very different. People vary from person to person. So people will find different books appeal to them, right? It's very difficult to find the same book that appeals to 2 people at one and the same time. So it's difficult. However, there are a number of professionals like Robert Hutchins, the president of the Chicago University, who is always into the stupid thing of drawing up a long list for great books. Also like Harold Bloom. Harold Bloom, of course, is a traditional institution, almost like a traditionalist. Nowadays, on the one hand, we have politically correct authors, women authors, black authors, Korean authors, Chinese authors, Iris Chang, Qiu Xiaolong, and so on and so forth, right? On the one hand. But on the other hand, you have traditionalists, like Harold Bloom. Harold Bloom is over 70 already. However, recently I read of a report in New York Times about Harold Bloom sexually harassing a girl student. many years ago. Many years ago, unfortunately. Unfortunately. He was a very Augusta-looking kind of institution. 这个人呢，看上去伪君子一样，很道貌岸然的这么一个人啊。他专门开书单的这位先生，他开的书单叫做 Great Western Civilization, and then he thinks that well, Western civilization is not quite adequate, so he starts with this men's civilization, including Analects of Confucius, Mencius, Confucius. He even included Mao. I think he included Mao. So he is that kind of person who is very much into the supreme theory, thinking that if you are going to be a cultivated person, you need to read all these books, best books. Everyone who has a glance through those catalogs knows how repellent they are. I know, of course. Well, a couple of years ago, a number of years ago, when Chen Tianquan was a party secretary of this university, Yang Fengjiao was the president, you know, they combinedly asked Wenke Jiaoshi to draw up a list of 100 books, you know, for the students to read. It's called a must reading for students. I only contributed those very funny books, just like this one, you know, like this one. Of course, not that flippant, but very interesting and very gripping kind of books, instead of those. But does he still realize why? Simply because they are inhuman, because these book lists are anything but human. Inhuman, they are inhuman. They are very inhuman. That is the list is nobody's list, though it contains something which will be in everybody's list. Everybody will find one or two books of some interest to him or her. However, the list as a whole is a very repellent, very off-putting. Meaning at the side of the list, you feel that you are afraid, you know. You feel that you won't be able to finish reading so many books within this short life of yours. We all know that life is short, the art is long. Well, then you will draw a line. So much for the various types of reader, 4 types of reader. Actually, 4 different recipes, 4 different therapies of curing the problem of what? Too many books. And then his own suggestion. Please look very closely at his own suggestion. Maybe in the final test, I will ask you to give me an answer as to what kind of tone. Well, I want you to describe very exactly what kind of tone with which he wrote about his own suggestions. So let's look at his suggestions. So much for the various types of reader. None of them solves the difficulty. What then is to be done? It is no answer to say, well, somebody would suggest read what you can and leave the rest. Because the size of the unread mess has positive and evil effects. Reason is why. In those who are honest by nature, this amount of books causes worry, causes anxiety, because there are too many. Overwhelming amount of books to be read, you know. So an honest person will find a sense of waste. Not only anxious, but also a sense of waste. Why should I spend so much time reading that? In the dishonest, however, on the other hand, the other side of the coin is that apart from those honest people, there are dishonest people. Showy people who want to show to the whole class that he or she has read this book, you know. Showy people. Well, as far as those showy people are concerned, what havoc does it work? Well, it causes snobbery and desire to outshine. To outshine. Well, to outshine, if you want to know the meaning of the word outshine, you can refer back to score off others. And not to be scored off by others. Always to score off others. So there is about one remedy. So my suggestion is as follows. That is a wholesale destruction. Wholesale destruction. Like Auschwitz. Like a Holocaust. But it's called a book Holocaust. Book Holocaust. Quite 9/10 of the good books should be burned. Quite, meaning no less than. Quite all right. Just like quite all right. No less than 9/10 of the good books should be burned. Of the bad, we need to say here as elsewhere nothing. And of course, we don't need to say anything about bad books. Bad books are bound to be made a pulp, made to be recycled, right? So we don't need to talk anything about the bad books. We are only talking about good books. They are, because the bad books, they are drawn towards the pulping machine by a force persistent as gravitational. They are just like a free fall objects. 自由落体一样I call 复旦大学 free fall object. 他们的那个校长老是讲，我们现在排位第几了？排位第几了？我说你慌什么呢？复旦大学再 free fall， 它还是那个位置，它掉不到哪里去了，它也上升不到哪里去了，就在那个地方，你说对不对啊？我想是 ，so free fall 一来呢，它就 irresistibly drawn to the pulping machine. But say some, quoting, perchance of course is an archaic word, by chance. But some say, quoting perchance their own reviews, your suggestion, Your Excellency, raises more difficulties than it solves. My answer is scarcely, my buddy, but I see two problems. I do see two problems. I really mean what you mean by posing difficulties. I do see two problems. Problem one is which are by no means so hard to solve as might appear. What are we to destroy? Problem one. Problem one, is the panda going to be eliminated, or is the rape of Nanjing to be eliminated, or is the book I'm just reading, Who Murdered Chaucer these days, is it going to be eliminated? So to decide upon the books to be eliminated is important. So what kind of books? Secondly, how are we to destroy it? The second question, relatively speaking, is easier. You strike a match, the rest is done, right? You spray a lot of gasoline on it, and then, everything is done. Just like what we do with the counterfeit products. Let me answer the second question first. What a book is condemned, then all public libraries burn their copies. Burn their copies. Well, it's mandatory, with whatever rights may seem fitting to its subject and matter and occasion. For instance, Fudan Dashi is going to celebrate the 100th anniversary of the founding of the school, right? And then maybe on that particular day, we'll have a book Holocaust ceremony, okay? I just received about 10 copies, 10 thick volumes of history of Fudan University. I said, well, your history is longer than the history of the Communist Party of China. They said that's only part of it, There's going to be a history of the medical college to come. Medical college to come. So as a result, there will be a terrible number of books. So I would suggest that we burn all these books, on that day. But on that day, if we burn all these books, we need some rites, rituals. Meaning Wang Shenghu will have to make a speech first. Why we must then burn all these books, right? And then the curator, the number one, the director of the library will set the match, maybe, right? So whatever rights that are supposedly appropriate, when a book is condemned, all public libraries burn their copies with whatever rights may seem fitting to its subject and matter and occasion. A very funny thing is about the 思想改造运动。1950年，他的这个复旦大学的校史里这样写的：1950年某月某日，北京大学校长马寅初提出 北京大学老师的思想改造计划，毛泽东主席表示同意。As if, intellectuals wanted to remote their own thoughts, okay? And then they proposed, we do that. Mao said, okay, yes, go ahead. As if it's not Mao's decision. Actually, it was Mao's decision. It was a very bad political movement, you come from the Chinese department. Your Liu Dajie, went to Huangpujiang to plunge into Huangpujiang, wanted to commit suicide. However, he was saved. Because, during this 思想改造运动, one has to make a self-criticism all the time, maybe for a week or for a month. And then nobody would say that your criticism is good enough. It's always bad enough, And then you will have to come back and do it again, again. And one of my teachers, a lady who taught me English when I was a third-year student, she used to smoke heavily. I used to smoke heavily too. We too were always smoking. The student and teacher were always smoking together, okay? And she said, well, look, sir, I tell you that to quit smoking is really painful. Because the pain is so excruciating. It's so slow. It's so chronicle that it looked pretty much like a thought remoting, 我这个文章里都写着了，你们可以去看啊。这位 Dora 女士现在还活着，88岁，潘思之先生的老婆啊。所以这个很难说，所以是有些书呢，真是用不着写，真是用不着写。100年，你这个100年又算个什么东西呢？你从历史的长河来看，100年算多少 ？How many galaxies do we have? So what this small dust of it is our Earth. 人都说中国这个地球不得了啊，地球现在不得了啊，一会儿tsunami来了，一会儿 earthquake 来了，好像就要不行了啊，它来这个行还。其实地球是多么一个 accident， 地球 is situated in the right place from the sun, and 地球 happens to be situated in the right place from the moon. Then there is this flow and ebb. Then there is a life, right? So that's why so many scientists eventually would become deeply religious. They think that finally there is some unseen force which really arranges for everything, for accidents as well as non-accidents. So all public libraries burn their copies with whatever rights may seem fitting to its subject matter and occasion. I had a tough luck of participating in one of the 开学典礼 some time ago. I was feeling extremely embarrassed, sitting there with 2 rows of our school heads, There are so many school heads. And then there was a military music going to be played. And then there was this school flag. School flag is what? The school flag is nothing. It's not St. John's. It's not St. John's caping on a regiment, all right? And then, all the new recruits will have to raise their right hands to make an oath, which was all the more ridiculous to me. See? It's not going to be an underworld. It's not going to be 黑社会 or anything like that, right? So it was funny. It was funny. So with whatever rights may seem fitting to its subject and matter. And finally, the MC, the master of ceremony would say, 礼成. 这就是我想起过去解放以前结婚的时候。结婚的时候，哪一个结婚，主婚人发言，证婚人发言，到最后呢就礼成啊，那么大家散。所以我们这种是变了 fossil 了，是变了化石了啊，应该到那个地下去了。It becomes illegal to possess, buy, sell the book or to expose it for sale. Well, he deliberately used the legal language. the use of a legal language is deliberate, purposeful. It henceforth becomes illegal to possess, buy, sell the book. In other words, it's called a traffic. To expose it for sale. All copies secretly preserved are stripped of their value by enactment. Enactment meaning ruling decree that any person quoting them, referring to them, or in any manner whatsoever, seeking personal credit from them, shall be persecuted under disturbance of the realm act. Again, sham legal, sham professional. 假装出来是非常法律的，非常法律的。谁敢引用他这个话，而且从引用得一的话，那就怎么样？妨碍王国罪。Okay, you will be sued. You will be sued. It's called a disturbance of the realm act, 妨碍王国治安罪。A fixed sum should be paid for each copy handed over to the police as a reward. You know. Finally, I hunted up some book from from the deepest corner in my friends' bookcases. So I'm turning this in, you know. So you must give me $100 as a kind of reward, okay? So every copy handed over to the police will be awarded. Well, I'm sorry, rewarded. That is the way, more or less, in which wolves were extirpated. When you kill a wolf, you're handing the wolf's fur, showing that you have killed a pest, okay? Then the police will give you money. Extirpated. So again, you know, books are just like pests. Like mosquitoes, like house flies, like too many roses, like wolves, like rats, okay? So that great, let me see, a fixed sum, maybe wolves were extirpated. Well, pay some attention to the word extirpated. Maybe finally you will be tested in your vocabulary power. I'm already thinking of giving you a test. Because your semester will terminate earlier than the rest. The great army of persons who thrive on the various forms of bibliography. What is a bibliography? Bibliography meaning book industry. It doesn't mean that, well, so-and-so wrote a what, you know, who wrote which, the type of list of that kind of thing, bibliography. The booksellers, the librarians, the makers and printers of catalogs, the gurus, finally. I think it is the second or third time we have come across this Eastern word, gurus, who like vultures on the battlefield, hover over the tuppenny box. Tuppenny box. We have seen a lot of a tuppenny box here, right? A very small store selling books, not books, selling magazines, newspapers, and so on and so forth. You know, it's called a tuppenny, meaning very, very cheap. Bookstores should be told that the state is not robbing them either of livelihood or excitement. I have a personal friend who opens a bookstore there, whose name is 毛毛。你们听到过没有？毛毛书店。就在一条街上面，这个小鬼什么事情都那个的。他有时候他自己要买菜了，店里没人看店，叫我替他看一刻钟，他自己去买小菜去了啊。哎，你别说这小鬼赚钱赚得来这个多啊。那么像这种人开店，你说他有什么好处啊 ？One is what? One is not for 毛毛though Well. 毛毛卖来卖去都是卖金庸什么这些东西的他不会买那种这个叫什么Panda Eats and Shoots and Leaves 这种他不会买的，对不对所以呢，对于那种真正的做 book 的那种商人来讲呢，有两样东西不可缺的。One is livelihood. 毛毛 operates his bookstore for what? For livelihood. He told me he was quite proud, you know. Because the other day, one of the graduate students went to his place to ask to get confirmed if I ever store set for him. Okay, he said yes. Well, it's very common for him to stores it for me. Okay, so he was very gratified. So for him, livelihood, of course, excitement, very little excitement for him, I'm afraid, because he's not a connoisseur of books. Connoisseur of books. For instance, if I give him a very, very worn-out copy of La Fontaine's Fables, my father received as a gift from his middle school, he would never attach a lot of importance to that. La Fontaine's Fables are very, very well drawn, well illustrated, you know. My father was learning French at that time in a secondary school. It's called 光明中学今天. At that time it's called Sino-French Academy, missionary school. So he was studying there. He was studying so hard that he always received a first prize. The first prize, one of the first prizes was a La Fontaine's book. So it became a family heirloom. It has become 家里的宝贝一样，我是把它供在那里一样的，已经书读烂了，那么你说毛毛会要这个书吧？他不要，他要本牛乳拉放天他要的，这是老书，这个青蛙肚子画的老大的有什么意思啊？没意思啊。他 excitement 不大有，他 livelihood 的多。这话你们不要传给他，他要火的啊！老师刚看不起我我只有 livelihood 的Of whatever thing a man is a smart guardian, says Plato, of that he is also a smart thief. 这句话呢是当年这个钱钟书先生翻译的最妙的比喻甚为之。那样东西某个人是要非常当心的保卫他的话，比喻甚为之，比喻巧妻之，他一定会很巧妙的把它偷窃过来。要慎卫保卫的，谨慎的保卫的话，一定会很巧妙的偷窃，听懂没有？So this is whatever thing a man is a smart guardian. Of that, he is also a smart thief, meaning that, well, they love books on the one hand, or on the surface you see that they all love their books very much. However, they are also the same beings who steal these books, you know, who steal these books. They are both makers and destroyers of a thing, So, let these experts continue their function of tracking books, but for destruction, not a preservation. Well, those book connoisseurs, especially second-hand bookstores, 那个文化大革命以前，福州路有个外文书店，卖这个你买本 Jane Austen， 4块5块就买到了所以那时候我们的书基本上都是那时候买的，非常便宜。而且你可以登记的 ，Tom Jones 他有新的30几块，你要吧？我不要，太贵。你去给我淘，你能不能淘到5块左右的你写个名字登记一下。Well, these are book connoisseurs, right? So you can leave whatever you want. You can leave the name of the author. You can leave the title of the book, and so on and so forth, right? So they will have a lot of pleasure. Going from place to place, trying to hunt up those books. The pleasure of hunting. See? The pleasure of hunting. 这个呢，只有喜欢读书的人才尝得到这种味道像我的老师的那个媳妇，把我老师的来信全卖掉，卖给同济大学的人发现了，说怎么搞的？这个里面都在讲徐彦谋、陆谷孙、葛传圭的什么东西，结果这个同济大学这位老师倒很好，89封信全部买下来送给复旦大学当档案馆，总算这些信没有流失，那么这个 hunting 本身是非常有趣的，这位先生大概很知道 hunting 的有趣连着我写给某某人呢一篇文章写完以后，我交了稿子，然后我说这个你给我的稿子呢，我还没用完，未用完的稿子呢，奉上这么一个便条，他都能在地摊上买到。 这个 pleasure 是我不知道你这个 pleasure 怎么样啊啊。So for destruction, not a preservation. Formerly, on previous occasions, they hunted for books for what? To preserve them. But now the purpose has been changed. You are not supposed to preserve them, but to destroy them. But hunting, the process remains the same. Remains the same. You hunt from Tilanqiao to Wenmiao, okay? You hunt from place to place, all the same, right? However, the final purpose is different. They will continue their function of tracking books. They will not care. What they love is the hard-won knowledge of the quarry. Quarry is the bird, is the game, is the game. Quarry is the game, is the bird. So the important thing is that, well, do you know that there is a very, very widespread habit of bird watching in the West, especially if you have a very large garden. And then usually on the windowsills you will have a number of binoculars. These binoculars are for bird watching. Bird watching. You see how birds mate, how birds are courting each other, this type of thing. So bird watching is a very interesting thing. From bird watching we have a new word which is called word watching. 现在不是都要看很多新词嘛，酷毙啦，什么什么啊，bird watching. So he's giving you the idea of bird watching. What they love is the hard-won knowledge of the quarry. They knew that this kind of a rare bird makes its appearance in certain places. Okay, so we'll take notice. Its appearance, methods of concealment, and habitat, usually in which cherry tree, for instance, do they hide themselves? See? And its ultimate destiny. Well, does the enthusiast who follows the scent of the first folio across England and at last runs it to earth in an apple loft sit down forthwith and read The Merchant of Venice? Meaning hunting is all. Hunting is all. The purpose is less important. For instance, today people would love to hunt for the first folio. First folio contains all Shakespeare's plays, which was edited by two of his friends 7 years after he was dead. Okay, it was in the year of 1623 when the first book came out. It's called the First Folio, about this long. A book about this long. A quarto is smaller than that. 所以呢，一讲到莎士比亚的文本呢，就两种，一种叫 quarto， 1/4本，对开本，这个是对折本，长的，对折本开始卖的时候非常便宜，1 pound 1 copy。Today several million pounds 1 copy， 今天不得了啊。So First Folio has become a fortune, has become a collectible, a very dearly collectible thing. Collectible thing, 可收藏的价值不得了啊！我去过那种地方，那个英国、美国的图书馆，它都有 rare books，一跑进去警铃大鸣，这个乱叫说明有人approach of hostile elements or with suspicious intentions. Okay, then the curator will gingerly fish out the bunch of keys, and with gingerly fingers open the iron gate, and take out those books for me to have a touch. I could very well do without a touch, because I was afraid that the book will disintegrate. So it's called the rare books. So it's extremely expensive today. So a book connoisseur will always look out for a first folio. A first folio is a fortune now. So did he look for this first folio? Getting sense from mouth to mouth. From farmer number 1, he said, he learned that farmer number 2 once showed a very old book, almost falling apart. Well, it seemed that farmer 1 had seen on its cover a gentleman's portrait who looks not very handsomely, but who with aquiline nose, with a balding, receding hairline, and so on and so forth. Not very attractive gentleman who wrote that. And then the connoisseur was alerted. It may be first folio. From farmer number 2, he learned that farmer number 1 may have that book. So he said, well, please give me farmer 1's address. And then he went to farmer 1's place. Farmer 1 happened to be out. So he waited there in a small inn of the town for a number of days until farmer 1 showed up. And then he would ask him, now, could you please show me the book? Yeah, sure. Follow me to the apple loft. What is the apple loft? Apple loft is a kind of attic, in a barn house. Usually where you store your fruit. 这个苹果放在那里准备做酱的，过冬的时候做苹果酱的在苹果仓库里面有这么本书你来看一看不看有可，一看果然是 first folio。First folio 是几千万英镑的事情all right 那么这位先生呢，总算是给我找到了这个。我在小镇上面旅馆里面待了7天没白待，总算找到了这本书。Then what did he do next? Did he sit down there, right there and then in the apple loft and open the book to the Merchant of Venice and started to read it? No way. No way. He would produce a handkerchief maybe. He would wrap it up very, very carefully, and then he would argue, he would bargain with the farmer about the price of the money, and then he left, He would never bother to take a look at the book. What he wanted is to put it up at an auction in order to get as much money as possible, right? That's the excitement. He will never read that. That's the enthusiast who follows the scent of the first folio. 完全像猎狗一样从 Farmer 2听到什么，再从 Farmer 1听到什么，然后到处去追那个 Farmer 1，可以写本小说的写本恐怖小说然后终于找到了，找到以后他会坐下来念吗？才不呢Apple Loft, sit down, forthwith and read The Merchant of Venice. Not he. If he ever reads the play at all, this is quite doubtful. 你说毛毛他会看 Merchant of Venice 吗？他可能会我一点没有轻视他的意思他可能会但是他看的呢往往是 Rialto 出的那个连环画 Rialto being the business center of Venice Rialto 我现在脑子里面还是非常清楚的印象这个桥一座桥这么一个地方非常热闹的地方最热闹的地方那地方呢出的是什么呢 Business center of Venice is called the Rialto and from Rialto they produce a popular edition with the pink pictures. Pink picture of course is a bad taste. For him the chase is all. The process of chasing is all. The new regime will alter his life enjoyment surprisingly little. 新政权有什么关系Book killing regime doesn't change a thing. You are still entitled to your enjoyment, to your, excitement. Well, surprisingly little. He would give interviews with the title, How I Stand Out the Fielding. 记者要采访吗？今天提个什么名字？好，我是怎么把 Harry Fielding 消灭掉的？我怎么像踩蟑螂一样的把 Harry Fielding 踩在脚下的？Harry Fielding being the father of British fiction. 这是一种。哦，这个报上这么一登啊，大家都要看了，这个好看啊！As if killing a cockroach. Nor is this the only way in which our newspapers will be brightened. 那么我们的报纸除了这么个标题以外，是不是其他的都是很无聊的东西啊？没有，有意思的东西多了。然后请看第二则故事。第二则故事叫做什么东西啊 ？During the first years of the new golden age of booklessness， 新时代到了，书都给烧掉了。这个 booklessness 的黄金时代到了。We shall read of a fanatic。哦，原来到时候还会有恐怖分子，还有本拉登的信徒还来了。本拉登的信徒来干什么呢 ？Fanatic who, hearing a cabinet minister quote the words as well known, almost killed a man as killed a good book。你能够把一本好书杀掉的人呢，就差不多就把个好人也给杀了。杀书等于杀人。A cabinet minister, Tony Blair once said that. Okay, then Tony Blair was under the threat of being killed by a terrorist. 这个报上一登，你说多有劲啊！Tony Blair 旁边的人总会保护着他。那么这个 fanatic 呢，等于是个 terrorist。Instantly shot him through the head。你容不得你讲第二句话了，摸出枪来就是一枪，把你的头脑浆给打飞了这个你说多 sensational。 The newspaper pages will be enlivened， 这个看上去多有劲。And of detectives at the peril of their lives are raiding a den of Wordsworth's printers。 第三则消息是什么？据本报讯，昨日有这个刑警大队派出队伍，专门这个冲击地下出版商。谁的地下出版商 ？Wordsworth 的地下出版商而这些侦探呢是要冒着生命危险的那些人不行的话要跟你对着干的。OK，let's take a rest。